Marriage equality is now officially a constitutional right, and the responses from the Republican presidential field range from cautiously conciliatory to boldly defiant. Jeb Bush released a statement that read in part, "Guided by my faith, I believe in traditional marriage. I also believe that we should love our neighbor and respect others, including those making lifetime commitments. In a country as diverse as ours, good people who have opposing views should be able to live side by side." Dr. Ben Carson wrote, "While I strongly disagree with the Supreme Court's decision, their ruling is now the law of the land." But not everyone was as accepting. Governor Bobby Jindal said the decision will pave the way for an all-out assault against the religious freedom rights of Christians. Mike Huckabee likened the ruling to British tyranny. "I will not acquiesce to an imperial court any more than our founders acquiesced to an imperial British monarch. The Supreme Court can no more repeal the laws of nature and nature's God on marriage than it can the laws of gravity." And then there was Donald Trump, who tweeted, "Once again, the Bush-appointed Supreme Court Justice John Roberts has let us down. Jeb pushed him hard, remember." Chief Justice John Roberts, by the way, voted against today's same-sex marriage decision. Joining me now is NBC News political director, moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, and Washington Post columnist Jonathan Capehart. Chuck, where does the Republican Party go from here on this issue?
Well, I think you're going to see sort of I think they're going to have one more round of internal debate on this issue, and I think it's going to be driven in the presidential primaries, and I think it's going to be driven by Huckabee, perhaps Bobby Jindal, Ted Cruz, Rick Santorum, sort of the 4 or 5 candidates that are trying to win over evangelical voters. And I think, particularly in a place like Iowa, that this is where you're going to see the debate the loudest on this issue. But I tell you, I've talked to a lot of consultants today and a lot of people on a lot of campaigns, and other than among the candidates that are trying to woo evangelicals, all of the other campaigns are quietly believing and I think hoping that the issue just simply dies, that it goes away. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think there is going to be a little bit of a resurgence and a little bit and frankly, let's see what happens at Cleveland when the convention gathers and they have to write their platform. What are they going to do about that plank that says constitutional amendment for defining marriages between one man and one woman? Will the GOP keep that in their platform if a Jeb Bush is their nominee?
Jonathan, to Chuck's point about the sort of broad array of responses, I was actually the contrast between yesterday and today. So many of these Republican candidates said basically, I don't really like it, but it's the law of the land, and so I tacitly accept it. That was obviously the opposite of the reaction yesterday, which was it may be the law, but I'm going to work to change it.
Right, because the politics work. I think maybe it was Chuck who said, basically, with the Obamacare ruling yesterday, Republicans get all the benefit of railing against the law that the base hates, while not being responsible for doing anything to change it. They don't have to. It's there. It's not going anywhere. When it comes to this, the marriage equality ruling, I agree with Chuck 100% that those candidates who are looking for the evangelical vote in the primary are going to keep pushing this very hard because for them there's nothing but upside. But I do think that the tone set by Jeb Bush, saying that he believes that marriage should be between one man and one woman, but at the same time believes that we should love our neighbor. That is a two-pronged strategy, saying to the base, look, we are in agreement on marriage equality, but saying to the overall country, just because I believe that doesn't mean that I hate same-sex couples or LGBT people. And so, the party knows that it has to get right on this issue. The autopsy on their 2012 presidential loss made it clear that if they want to reach millennials, who, by the way, 61% of whom Republican millennials support marriage equality, if they want to reach them on a whole host of other issues that are important to the Republican Party, whether it's tax policy or national defense, they have to get right on marriage equality if they're going to pull them or going to keep them in the party.
Yeah, but Chuck, there's only so much that these candidates can control, right? I mean, there's a probate judge in Pike County, Alabama, who today announced that he's not going to issue marriage licenses. Right. I mean, there will be resistance at the local and state level, and one assumes that as much as Republicans may sort of secretly want this issue to be off the table come debate season, for example, if these judges sort of continue on their own, it remains something in the ether, and only 33% of Republicans, not Republican millennials, but Republicans support same-sex marriage.
True. I'll be curious to see. I do believe, now that the Supreme Court has spoken, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers shift, basically shift in favor of same-sex marriage across the board. So in 2 months from now, I wouldn't be shocked if we're up to 40 to 45% of all Republicans being supportive of same-sex marriage. So, you know, that happens a lot when something sort of gets settled. You know, you see this shift. By the way, it is fascinating to me. The Roberts dissent on this. It is almost as if he wrote it so that the potential Republican nominee candidates like a Jeb Bush or others that want to straddle that fence had something to hang their head on. Because the Roberts dissent is sort of, well, you can celebrate the majority opinion, you can be happy about it, but let me give you a legal reason why I'm against it. But you didn't get the sense that Chief Justice Roberts personally is opposed to same-sex marriage, but he was like looking for a way to find a way to be. It was.
I mean, even Scalia basically said as much too. Nothing. This is not about gay marriage as an idea, as a concept per se. I take issue with the fact that 9 lawyers are making this decision, Jonathan. But when we talk about how this plays politically, if you look at the last week, right, we're having a debate over the Confederate flag. We have just seen the Supreme Court uphold the Affordable Care Act, and now this, and I think for a section of the electorate that feels like the tide is changing rapidly and moving away from them, specifically white Southerners, this has been a tremendously unnerving week, and that's probably putting it euphemistically.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a pretty shocking week for them. And you can't forget the fair housing case that was handed down yesterday, too. This is it's a huge win for liberals slash progressives. But I also think if you go back to 2012 and the president's reelection, when everyone thought, and I say everyone, I mean Republicans, including Mitt Romney, thought that President Obama was going to lose, thought that his base was demoralized and that the country really was, to their mind, a center-right country, and that all they needed to do was get President Obama out of the White House and then everything would be right. But the president was reelected convincingly with a strong coalition of young people, people of color, women. And if you look at these decisions that have came down this week, a lot of the Obama coalition are very tied up into those decisions, and so that's another thing that the Republican Party has to be mindful of. The country's changing, and even though the white Southern base that the Republican Party depends on doesn't like it, if they want to be a national party again, if they want to win the White House again and be a national party again, they have got to change the way they talk about the country and the way they view the country.
It is not just a coincidence that Hillary Clinton's H went rainbow today.
I'll tell you, it's funny, just very quickly. I agree, everything Jonathan said I agree with there, because you're going to see this. I think you're going to see a reactionary response by that core base of the Republican Party that is going to cause national headaches for the party as it tries to rebrand itself.
It's going to be interesting both ways. Chuck Todd, Jonathan Capehart, thank you guys both.